So we are here for our Inspired series for BAPS Better Living, and today we're very excited to have with us Kush Patel, who's with Relative Dynamics. Kush, I actually know very little about you, so do you mind kind of filling me in and the rest of the audience on who Kush is?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for, having me on this podcast. Um, I'm an aerospace engineer. Let's see, I did my bachelor's of engineering from University of Maryland. I then started my master's there, and then I completed it at MIT. After completing sort of my master's, I worked at NASA Goddard for a year and a half, supporting the space shuttle missions. And that was pretty cool because most people my age didn't get to support a very historic program within NASA, which is sending, humans to the space station recurrently, 4 or 5 times a year.
So Kush, hold on, you use the letters MIT and just brush past it. Like that's huge. Can you tell us a little about like how did it feel to get into MIT? And then obviously the NASA stuff is exciting. What you're doing now is exciting, but you can't
Yeah.
brush off something small like NASA.
No, I don't talk about it that much. Maybe I should. It was, growing up, I was not a very studious person or child, right? My mother and father would always, yell at me for study, study more, you're wasting your time. But when I started applying for undergrad, for some reason I had this thing that I want to go to MIT because I knew I wanted to do aerospace, and I knew that MIT, just is like the number one aerospace program, competed against Stanford, obviously. But when I applied to it, I remember conversations in my household at that time was, hey, buddy, we can't really afford this because it's really, really expensive, and our parents are first generation, immigrants, right? And so they work multiple odd jobs to even just give us the bare necessities of life. So I applied and I got waitlisted then. But I had gotten into the University of Maryland engineering program immediately. And so it was a decision that was more of an economical decision that we made that, okay, let's just go to Maryland. But it was always nagging at me that, I want to go there. I want to get the experience. I just want to see if I can get in. And so when I started doing my master's, I figured, hey, why not see if I could, see if I get in. And that's when I sort of applied, and fortunately I got in, and I was able to have at least a year up there, and it was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. It
Man,
was
I went to
awesome.
school in Boston, and it's really is an amazing place. But I just say Boston because I went to Boston University. I'm very proud of it. But
Well, that's on the other side of the river, so we kind of.
Harvard, MIT, or I went to school in Boston. But tell me this: you had struggles, right? External struggles, like the financial struggles. Our parents, first generation, like these things are new to them. Even I know when I was applying for college, like my parents didn't know much about college, right? They had a goal: you have to be a doctor, and that's it. Like how to get there was all up to me. But not even that. But like, what if someone today is like a kid that is in the same situation? Like, what were some of the things that you kind of focused on to make this happen? Just kind of, like being able to like get rid of all that external noise that comes our way.
Jamin, that's an interesting question. I don't have a real answer, but I'll tell you sort of what I sort of went through because there are specific moments in my life that are sort of etched for some reason. Even if I wanted to forget it, I just can't. And so this is something I remember when I was going through the motions of high school. Um, I had a mentor who was one of my mentors. Um, he said something really interesting to me that really opened up my eyes. He said, "You could either struggle for 4 years, work hard and struggle for 4 years, and live an amazing life for 50 to 60 years, or you could have fun and sort of, just relax and let loose for 4 years, and you could struggle for 50 to 60 years." And, having that logical mindset, I'm just like, why wouldn't I take this bet? And I remember strapping down and thinking, okay, what do I want to do with my life that I'm gonna love doing? Because, I saw my mom and dad doing jobs that they didn't really enjoy, but they knew that they had to do it because that was the only way to bring in the money. That was the only way to bring in bread in the house. And even, like simple, basic entertainment of like TV or cable or whatever it is, right? Um,
And now
and
we
and
have
I,
different streaming services
yeah,
that we subscribe to, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we kind of
and
cut the cord, but we're more attached.
yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's like, man, like if I'm gonna live my life, I gotta, I need to do something that will be meaningful to not just me, but also to my parents and to everyone that sort of sacrificed whatever they did to bring me to where I am. And so I remember at that time thinking, okay, if we study, then let's try to study the best and study what I enjoy. So passion, you have to really, really know that, okay, I'm doing this and there's not going to be anything that's going to stop me. And that was sort of the reason why I decided aerospace, because it was always a fascinating field. It was always amazing, the unknown, right? Like what is out there, what else can be done, rockets, satellites, and that sort of allowed me to really strap down and say, you know what, okay, we're going to do aerospace engineering. And I remember my father telling me, he said, why don't you do pharmacy? And I'm like, dude, I don't have any inkling to get into the medical field. I was really bad at chemistry and extremely bad at biology. And he goes, but look, if you graduate, you get $100,000 job right off the bat and your job security, right? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Um, but I'm gonna probably hate my life, right? And to him that was like a very foreign concept. Like, what do you mean hate your life? Like you work, you don't need to love your work. It just needs to bring in the money. And I said, hey, I want to do aerospace. And he was like, you're crazy. Like, okay, so you pick engineering, but aerospace is so niche, even within all the engineering fields, that it is extremely difficult to not only get a job, but then to get a job that's going to have a career path that will progress up and up and up. Because it's not as broad as mechanical, it's not as broad as electrical, it's not as broad as structural, civil. And so I remember him kind of saying, "Yeah, I don't think you should do this." But fortunately, both my parents kind of said, "Fine, do what you
Well,
think
they
is right
supported you,
and
right?
support
You
you."
had your parents, you
Yep.
had the support, and you had a
Yep.
straight mindset. But what's really interesting is I'm in the healthcare field, but a lot of the stuff that I use on a day-to-day basis, the research actually came from like endeavors in space,
Yep.
which is amazing. Even a lot of the foods that we eat and how they're grown, a lot of the research happened in space.
Yep.
So you're still contributing to healthcare. Your line of work is still contributing to
That
healthcare. It's this
that's right.
roundabout way that people may not understand,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. So, you applying to school was a challenge. I'm sure when you were applying to your initial jobs it was a challenge. But let's just fast forward to today, and then we'll kind of go back.
Okay.
Recently, you and your company were in the news. You did something very exciting. Do you mind just kind of giving us your viewpoint on what was accomplished?
Yeah. So, it's been 13 years that I have been running Relative Dynamics, and it's been a hell of a story. Just ups and downs. And I don't talk about my journey because I don't think it's close to completion at all. And so, you don't talk about something until, you're kind of seeing the, sun setting, right? But just most recently,
Do you
our
not
company
talk
was,
about it because you're worried that there's going to be a failure that's going to bring you down, or do you not talk about it because you're waiting? Because most entrepreneurs, that they're never satisfied. There's always something else they're trying to go for, right?
man, okay, so we're getting into this. All right. So I don't talk about it because quite honestly, there's still that fear within me that something ridiculous can happen and the company bellies up. Not that, that's going to happen because we have safeguarded it and have secured it for the next at least 8 to 10 years. But that's why I don't talk about it. There's that fear inside of me, like, okay, what if I talk about the company and then like a year goes by and it's like, hey, relative dynamics doesn't exist anymore, and yeah, that would be very embarrassing. So it's out of insecurity, I guess, that I don't talk about it. But let me tell you sort of the recent thing that kind of you brought up. Most recently, we were recognized as NASA Goddard's Small Business of the Year, and it's fascinating because NASA has over 2 to 3 thousand small businesses that they contract their work to, and to be selected as the one, small business, to get the award for that is a testament to this entire company, to the leadership, to all the employees. And it's because
How big is the company? How many people work there?
let's come back to that. Let's just say it's a big number, but we won't sort of get into that.
Conversational, so I'm keeping it conversational. We'll let you finish your frame of thought. You definitely want to just get to the moon. I get it. Let's go.
Yeah, well, hey, we'll talk about the moon because we did go to the moon. But
Tell us about that. Yeah.
yeah, but what separates relative dynamics from sort of most small businesses are two things, right? Small business, aerospace small businesses. The first is that we have a technology development arm of the company, and most aerospace small businesses don't have that. And what I mean by that is there's engineering services, right? So we provide, sort of engineering designs, analysis, operations, maintenance of the NASA and the DoD assets. But then there's also technology that we're developing for NASA and for DoD and for the intelligence community. And that's all done in-house, our own IP, our own patents. And in this area, you could count maybe two companies, us being one of them, in the entire DC, Maryland, Virginia area that is truly a aerospace engineering technology development company. And the other fascinating thing that has brought a lot of visibility to us from a lot of people in the industry is that, we're not venture capitalist backed company. We've bootstrapped this whole thing from ground up, and I take pride in that because I was in a conversation with some of the C-suite in the aerospace industry, folks that are always on the news. And what they told me is that the chance of a company in this industry, in the aerospace industry, to succeed for 13 years and have security for the next 8 to 10 years without VC backing and without line of credits, they said it's 1 in a billion shot. And that's why I think I'm blessed. I think it's a spiritual blessing. I think it's just the guidance I've gotten from Pramukh Swami Maharaj and the other mentors that I've had in my life, that I am where I am today.
So what exactly happened? What part of your company made it to the moon?
So we so we have a really good relationship with the company called Intuitive Machines, right? And so the owners of Intuitive Machines, Steve Altimus and I, have been good friends for many, many, many years. And about 4 years ago, he had won a contract. It was the very first commercial contract that NASA had ever given of a commercial company in the history of the world to develop a lunar lander that goes to the moon. And so Steve and I were talking, and he said, look, what can relative dynamics do to help? And, he wanted to kind of vertically integrate his company, which is what he did. And so because we were friends, I kind of said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I sent a tribute to someone that meant, a whole lot to me? I mean, my whole life. I mean, I owe where I am today to this particular individual. And that's Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And he said, well, who is he? And so, I took him to the BAPS Mandir in Houston, and he was just fascinated by the story of Pramukh Swami Maharaj, just as an individual, right? Forget the spirituality, but the individualness of it, and about how much I have, kind of gained inspiration and blessings to be where I am today when, all odds are still stacked against us, but we're still persevering through the journey. And he said, you know what, Kush, let's do it. Let's give a tribute to him as the first individual in the history of the world to ever be, acknowledged and to be paid tribute on a celestial body. And so we did that. And, we also wanted to send, specific names of individuals from his company that, kind of helped develop the lunar lander. So we developed these plates that went on the landing legs of the actual lander. And one of those we developed was for Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And so, it was, I think, I mean, Jamin, I think that's kind of the coolest thing I think I've ever done in my life, is to,
Well, now, but
yeah,
you're still going to do a lot of cool things. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, from a
yeah,
professional standpoint, I
yep,
think the sky is open for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. But let me ask
yep.
you a question. This is pretty huge what you've done, but what you're doing in the company, building this company, being so set financially. How how do you build a team that supports you then? Because obviously you play a part, but the team also plays a part. So is it easy to form a team that you work with so closely that can make your vision come true? Or is it like a hard thing? And what are some skill sets that are essential to make this a successful endeavor?
Yeah. Very good question, actually. It's extremely difficult to put together the right team, and for the most part, we've sort of figured that out. I mean, every now and then we still, have challenges with, some of the people that we add or, don't add. But where I've been very fortunate is sort of the values that were taught to me from childhood, right? Whether it was going to the mandir or whether my parents taught that to me or I picked it up from just inspirational sort of, interactions I've had. I remember when I started this company, I was employee number one. And I mean, keep in mind, I was 23, okay? And so no one really was trusting.
23 plus 13, so we're putting you at 36 years old now.
36 years old. That's right. Wow. Okay. And so, when I started this company, when I was 23, I had almost everyone tell me that, dude, this industry is so small and it requires so much experience for anyone to give you any sort of work to develop a satellite, to develop a subsystem, to work on a NASA mission or a private mission, whether it's SpaceX or Blue Origin, that you're just not going to succeed. And they weren't saying it out of just, being mean or rude or, sort of just negative. It was a reality. That is true. When I started this, the first 2.5 to 3 years, it was just me by myself. And I realized that the only way I can grow this company and the vision that I have for what I want to do with Relative and what Relative will provide to the world, is that I need to put together a team of people that are as crazy as me and they'll believe in my passion. And I remember the first 2.5 to 3 years, I used to try to be someone that I'm not, right? I used to sound a little bit more sophisticated, and for those that know me, I'm not. I used to, perceive or promote myself as more, professional and mature and whatever it is. And I realized that didn't work. And when I started talking to individuals in the industry that I would always hope that one day they would leave the company that they're at and join me as my C-suite or my board, what I started realizing is, you know what? Let me just be who I am. Tell them what my real vision is. Tell them why I am crazy and why I left a very secure job to do this at a young age and why I think they got to come on this journey with me. And that snowballed. Starting 2016, I started picking up people in the C-suite that truly were, graybeards in the industry, right? They've been there for 25, 30 plus years. So they know a lot of people, powerful people that they can convince to allow us to do very interesting work that takes us a step towards our vision and our goal. And, when I brought one person over, it allowed others to say, well, okay, if so-and-so is willing to take a chance on Kush, you know what? Let's go ahead and jump in because this company is interesting. They're not going to go belly up because they don't have any VC money. So nothing is motivating them to make rash and hard decisions and quick decisions. They're taking it very strategic and very methodical. And so that then started a trend of people wanted to come over to Relative that I would be like, no, it's okay. I don't think you get it. But honestly, the success of this company, I would rest it solely on the team, the leadership team that I've been able to put together because these individuals are phenomenal. I mean, the background that they have, the amount of successes that they have achieved and accolades that they have gotten in their careers, and for them to come over to a tiny company and believe a 23-year-old that hey, yeah, we're gonna push through with this.
Yeah.
It says a lot. And its values, honestly, it's I've asked this question, to your other part of the question is what skills do you need to put that team together?
Hold on, before we say that, really quickly. So I think you brought up a great point. Professionalism is also relatively dynamic. You put on words here with your company's name, because you're absolutely right. You should be yourself, and you say, well, I wasn't professional or this or that. You were still very professional. Your mission was professional.
Right.
Your work ethic was professional. It's just you didn't want to be someone else or sound like someone else. And actually, that happens to me as well as I go up my professional ladder. Like I try to be like some administrator or someone that I may see online that's like, man, he's very successful. And I realize every time I've tried to copy someone or emulate someone else, I've gone 10 steps back because I'm just not, my passion is not there. So you being you led to, I'm assuming a infectious passion and
Yep.
passion infection. I can't even say it right now. That led people to just come to you. They migrate to you, and I think that's really cool. I think being you is very, very important in any line of work you go into. But it's very hard because what's our marker for success? It's who we see is already successful, right?
Exactly. Yep. And being you is one of the hardest things that I struggle with. Even as an entrepreneur, as a leader, because the world that we live in today, Jamin, they you almost have to fit into a box or a version of who those around you want you to be in order for you to feel your inner peace. And unless you have clarity on who you are and keep redefining it. See, it's one of those things that like you can't just say, well, okay, this is Kush, and then not think about it. You almost have to keep redefining that for yourself, because that's what allows you to be you. And to me,
Another way to look at it, Kush, is you can create your circle based on other people, or you can create your circle. You create your circle. So
yep,
you either let other people affect you and you become who they want you to become, or you toss them all out. You
yeah.
find people, and I think it naturally migrates to you. These people naturally migrate to you, as you kind of just become your true self.
And that's the harsh reality in the last few months to a year. I mean, after, last year, I have sort of come to accepting is that I have to be around people that allow me to be myself, because being myself is what has allowed me to achieve some of these successes and convince some of the most powerful people to join us or to support us in our journey of relative dynamics. And that means, certain hard lines mentally have to be drawn, right? Certain emotions have to be kept in check. But that comes with sense of security that I'm still working on. That it's going to be a lifelong kind of struggle. But I've been very fortunate with an amazing wife, with a few friends that are always on my corner. That it doesn't matter, I could call them and just complain and be depressed or whatever it may be. But they're always there to say the right things and put me right back on my path of sort of, okay, let's march ahead. Yep.
So, Kush, how do you mentioned struggles, right? So, what do you do on it? Like, tell us about your daily day. Like, what do you do to keep yourself physically and mentally fit?
Outside of work.
Just it could be in work too. Like, do you do push-ups in between meetings? Or
Yeah. No. So one of the
what does a day in life of Kush look like beyond
yeah.
today,
Okay.
where I'm, making you sit down with me?
Yeah. No. So one. There's two to three things I've gotten into habit of doing every day. One I do is I journal now. I used to and forgive me, if this sounds very bad, but I used to think that journaling was the most dumbest thing that anyone can do, and it's just like a waste of time, to be quite honest. And like I fought it for like 35 years of my life. Like, this is so dumb. Like I could just think about my thoughts, right? And one day I was just not one time, few, that duration of a few days, I was not in my right headspace. And my wife, she said, you just got to try journaling. I'm like, that's so dumb. We're not doing journaling. Like, I don't need a shrink. And she goes, it's not a shrink, but you need to journal. And I was like, fine, you know what, I'll do it. So I started journaling, and man, it's weird. Like, I can't say how it helped, but I could say it definitely does help. So I journal every day. And it's not a set time because my life is so fluid. I have two young kids, and then the company's there's just things that just very dynamic, right? Things are always moving. And changing, and then the volunteering I do, it just requires a lot of time. So whenever I find 15 minutes, I will sit down and journal about my thoughts, about my experiences, my emotions. I'll journal about, hey, what does the next year look like for myself individually, for relative dynamics, for my family. So I do that. The second thing I do is I read for 15 minutes a day. And again, this comes from a person who hates reading. Okay, absolutely.
You and I are the same person.
Dude, I like,
Journaling, and when it comes to reading,
yeah, man.
it helps.
I'm just like, yeah, and my wife loves reading, and my friends, that have achieved something in their life. I said, Kush, you gotta read, and I'm like, but just tell me, like audio podcast. I get it. Like, I'll just listen to it. Like, no, you got to get in discipline to sit down and read. So I started doing that, and that has helped me tremendously. I mean, I can't explain how, but it's the experience, that feeling of, okay, it's working. And honestly, the third thing I do is I try to, 4 times a week, I will go for a 3 mile jog, just to be physically fit, right? And so it could be in my office, just going around in circles during a meeting that my camera doesn't need to be on for, or I'll go home and I'll go run for 3 miles, before I, kind of sit down for dinner. But these are the three things that I have put into practice in the last year and a half to 2 years, and I could see a change in the way I'm thinking, right? It's made me a little bit more open-minded. It's made me a little bit more tolerant, a bit more secure with who I am as an individual, and has given me clarity or glimpses of clarity, right? That I feel like, okay, I'm going down the right path. This is not, this is okay. This is not going to be as bad as I thought it is. So,
So, Kush, last question for me is, what role has spirituality played in your journey, whether it's professional, family, mental health?
yeah.
That's a loaded question.
Well, it's loaded because I know what I'm about to say, to the listeners and to anyone I say it to, it comes off as, well, of course he's gonna say this, and it's scripted. But I'll tell you honestly, like, I would not be who I am if it wasn't for spirituality, and specifically if it wasn't for the BAPS satsang that I started going to, because I wasn't born in spirituality, right? Like, I wasn't born into satsang. Growing up, my parents believed in multiple different, facets of Hinduism, and but we were never devout. It was like, we're spiritual people, but there was no consistent spiritual practice growing up. And I remember when I started high school is when I got really serious about spirituality. I came into, a contact with a few of the sadhus from the BAPS, Sampradaya organization, and just conversations with them were very motivating, inspiring, enlightening. And for the most part, I said, okay, well, this is good for me personally. But as I grew older, when I started this company, I mean, Jamin, I think this is the first time I'm ever openly saying this. I have had 7 to 8 times in the first 3.5 years of opening up Relative Dynamics where I wanted to just shut this company down and just close up shop and walk away with it. It is a very, being an entrepreneur is an extremely difficult journey. It is a journey that, unless others are walking it with you, they just won't understand, nor can you expect them to understand. It is a journey that, it is emotionally taxing and difficult. And again, I'll tell you this, I got diagnosed with borderline, depression, clinically, 2.5 years into starting this company. And, if it wasn't for spirituality, if it wasn't for my interactions with Pramukh Swami Maharaj and Mahant Swami Maharaj, sadhus within the sampradaya, my volunteer interactions with the other volunteers, that I do, seva with, right? It's a very Sanskrit word, seva, but it holds more than just the value of volunteering, right? I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I honestly give 100% of the reason for where I am individually, right? Married with 2 beautiful kids, professionally, CEO of a growing aerospace technology development company, and just as a family man, right? Like, to my parents and, to my sister and everyone. There's a lot to work on right here. Okay. This is still a lot of flaws over here, a lot of insecurities, but yeah, but what gives me strength is that the spiritual path I'm on is inching me towards becoming a better individual every day. And to me, that's why Relative Dynamics is where it is today. Because every time I think about giving up, I get an inspiration from Mansai Maharaj and or the different satsang, or spiritual text, or sermons I listen to. I mean, it just gets me right back up and saying, you know what, let's go. Like, enough crying. Like, no, you need to pick yourself back up. God does no wrong. Move forward.